Okay, Mr. Jada, it's all yours.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Conte.
Mhm.
Thank you, everybody, again for being here. Um, Dr. Conte, we're going to look at three main issues today. We will look at we'll quickly look at the SFL Baba Jah court settlement, out of court settlement. Briefly, I just wanted to say a few things about that. And then we will revisit Bob Keita case, the new turns it has taken. And then we will look at the government salary increases. Government salary increases is our main topic, but we will look at these other issues. Also, I want to briefly talk about the new development concerning the trial of the Gun Petroleum officials. Um, I have information that government is planning to um, refile charges against these two officials, Sekou Drame and Lamin Gassama. According to the government information or sources, um, the investigations into these allegations are still ongoing, are not completed. At the conclusion of the investigations, government will refile charges against these two officials. Um, One caution that the government may want to take about refiling charges is that they have to be careful to avoid double jeopardy. Again, anything I say here does not constitute legal advice, I'm not very familiar with Gambian law, but I do know that in the U.S. you cannot try a person twice for the same crime. In coming with new charges, government lawyers need to be quite careful so they don't fall into the same trap that the previous trial fell into. We will remember uh, that the charges, government's case against these two officials, Sekou Drame and Lamin Gassama, have been thrown out for lack of merit. The government has no case against them. Many people blame this on the poor investigations conducted by government. Uh, so, if they are planning to refile charges against these two officials, they have to be really careful not to have that charge thrown out again for pretty much the same reasons, lack of merit or uh, the problem of double jeopardy. So that much I wanted to say. However, Doctor, I think most Gambians are convinced that these two officials are culpable, involved in corrupt practices. Drame particularly have been known to be very lavish. Uh, there are many accounts of his um, financial excesses, um, many of which, based on my information, um, cannot be explained by his salaries. Um, so seeing those two people get away with literally get away with murder, um, it's not going to go down well among the Gambian population. But again, the law is the law. The government needs to be careful in pursuing this case if they are to refile charges against them. Dr. Conner, briefly, I don't know if you have anything to say about this new development. Otherwise, we're going to go straight into our topics for today.
No, I don't have much to
All
say
right.
about it.
Okay, so I wanted to say a little bit about Esa Faal Baba Jah out of court settlement. Dr. Conte, we learned that Esa Faal and Baba Jah, who had a public incident involving assault and battery on the person of Baba Jah by the security guards or security of Faal ended up being, how would I call it, dropped at the police headquarters. The announcement by Faal is that Baba Jah apologized to him and that he accepted the apology in good faith, and then the matter is over. They're both moving ahead. And according to Baba Jah himself on his platform, he did apologize to Faal based on Faal's request for an apology. And then he accepted to apologize to him, and then the matter is over. It is interesting, and this is a good thing, I would say, but it is interesting that the matter just ended like that. First off, I wanted to make some clarifications on these for the benefit of our readers, why cases get settled out of court usually. In Baba Jah's case, his acceptance to outright apologize to Faal and then the matter is over after video evidence that Faal's security assaulted him and caused him bodily harm, possibly injury, and damaged his properties, like his cell phone. Baba Jah agreeing to disregard all of these and agreed to just issue an apology is either out of his ignorance of his legal options or outright naivety. We do understand that Faal is a lawyer, and he was represented by an attorney in the person of Fati, lawyer Fati, Ablai Fati, I believe. I don't know if Baba Jah has been represented by any attorney, but if he did, it would look to me that he was not, because clearly he may have legal options in this case, where Faal may have to pay monetary damages to him for his bodily injuries or the damage to his property. Some people claim Baba Jah actually received up to 25,000 compensation for his damaged property, but both of them, both Faal and Jah, did not mention this. So I am still skeptical that money may have been exchanged in this deal. Settling out of court actually is a very common thing, and I hope Gambia uses this a lot to help with the backlog in our courts. Dr. Conte, Gambia doesn't seem to settle a lot out of court, but in the U.S., settling out of court is a very, very common thing. Actually, my understanding is that close to 80 to 90% of all cases in the U.S. end up being settled out of court. Very few cases make it to the courtroom. So lawyers in the Gambia need to find ways to settle. For example, this Bob Keita case, I think there was an opportunity to settle it out of court. Bob Keita's lawyers could have approached the government prosecutors and offer them something on the table, put something on the table, like Bob can plead to a lesser charge of probably harassment, sexual harassment, or unlawful touching, or something similar, something less than rape, and agreed to give something, agreed to probably take care of the girl and her kid up to a certain number of years, or even give a lump sum amount of money to them to actually get over this issue. Maybe he may serve a year or two in jail, but there is a possibility that the matter could have been settled out of court. But I don't know why. A lot of times in Gambia, we don't explore those opportunities. Also, Gambians have been captivated by a lot of these cases. One particular is Bob Keita's case. But it is important or worthwhile to also mention that, Dr. Conte, court cases, cases that make it to trial, are quite interesting in the sense that the trial part, which tend to captivate a lot of people, is only a tiny fraction of the legal process. Lawsuits, the bulk of the lawsuit, probably 3/4 of lawsuits are fought outside the courtroom. The trial comprised of a very small portion of the process of a lawsuit, probably less than a quarter of it. Most of the battle in the lawsuit are fought in interrogatories, depositions, legal research, and all that stuff outside the open courtroom. So we got to also understand that when we talk about delays in court, we have to remember that the trial itself, it's not usually where all the delays come from. The delays also come from the gathering of evidence, depositions, interrogatories, research, and all that stuff. So the more complicated a case is, the more likely that there's going to be a lot more time spent on these processes before we even get to the courtroom. So that much I wanted to briefly say about that issue, Dr. Conte. Any comment on? I know these are mostly going to be my take on these issues. I really expect you to come in more when we get to the salary increases in the Gambia. But meanwhile, if you have anything to say about Baba Jad as a Faal settlement out of court, Dr. Conte, just briefly.
I don't have much to say on that.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Conte. Next thing I want to briefly talk about also is the Bob Keita case again, the revisiting of Bob Keita case. We learned over the week that arrests were made regarding the incident that happened in Senegal, the death of the minor child involved in this Bob Keita trial. Senabu and 2 other men were arrested, and Senabu, they're both in jail, detention right now, remand actually, pending trial. I think they will probably make their first appearance in court tomorrow, I think. And Senabu has been charged. I think all of them have been charged with manslaughter. Just briefly to say that manslaughter is a capital crime, I believe, in the Gambia. And so the initial appearance by these accused persons were at a magistrate court, which clearly lacked jurisdiction. The kind of jurisdiction involved was subject matter jurisdiction. So the subject matter of this case is beyond a magistrate court. It can only be heard by a high court. So the matter was adjourned for further hearing, probably Monday, when the accused will appear in the High Court to mention the case again. They are likely to face involuntary manslaughter. Clearly, I don't think there's any motive for voluntary manslaughter in this. So it can only be involuntary manslaughter. On the face of it, it appears to me that involuntary manslaughter may be the one involved, which means either criminal negligence or unintentional homicide. But it looks like it might be criminal negligence because unintentional homicide will probably cannot be supported by the evidence. And, I am saying this, I do understand that still in the Gambia, it is, widely frowned upon to comment on a case that is still pending in the courts. And I think the Chief Justice actually mentioned this today at the induction of 46 lawyers into the legal fraternity in the country. I watched that this morning. He was talking about lawyers and the general public desisting from commenting on cases that are still in the courts. I have to say that there's a fine line between freedom of speech and the need for people to refrain from commenting on. In the U.S., we comment on cases all the time. cases pending in the courts, cases, ongoing cases in the courts. We comment on them all the time. There is, the public are free to comment on this, and journalists are by large. Also, there is a fine line between freedom of speech and these restrictions. But also, one has to say that judges and lawyers are expected to be immune to be swayed by public sentiments, right? In the case of a jury, I can understand. Jury are largely lay people. They could be swayed by the media, by the public sentiments or comments, but I don't expect judges on the bench or lawyers to be swayed. These are highly professional people. They should be driven by the facts and the law, not public sentiments or public commentaries. And we don't really have a jury system in the Gambia. So I don't think public comments or public sentiments are likely to sway judges and juries in the country. So that fear should be less concerning to Gambians, I think. I want to highlight that also briefly, Dr. Conte. That's that for those two items I wanted to make a comment on. We're going to move on to our main topic today, Dr. Conte. The government has cut the 2022 budget by significant margins to fund salary increases for civil servants. On the face of it, this is very ill-advised at this time. And I think I sent you some spreadsheets concerning this, Doctor. I did compute based on the percentages that the government wants to slash from each ministry. I computed that and showed how much money is to be taken out of each ministry to support these salary increases. And actually, there are two seats. And then the second seat, seat 2, I actually indicated what each ministry, the ministries, key ministries, how much money their budget will be decreased or how much money their budgets will be increased. Dr. Conte, what I want to say really is that increasing salaries at this time, what it is really doing is that it is going to increase the spending power of a key sector of the economy. It is actually going to push demand outwards, right? And with all the bottlenecks in the supply side, we are going to see an upward pressure on prices of all commodities, actually. So commodity prices are definitely going to increase, basically wiping out any benefit from a salary increase by these officials. So if you look at those spreadsheets, you will see the name of ministries on the first column, and then you will see the amount of monies that are allocated by 2022 budget to those ministries and departments. And then the third column with the red numbers, those are the percentages that each ministry is going to be slashed yes. And then I computed the actual amount of money. These are in dollars, but actually it's supposed to be in dollars. So count those in dollars, not in dollars. So if you go to the final column, you will see the actual amount of money each ministry will now have. So this final column will indicate the actual monies now each ministry will have. It's just a simple computation I did over there. But if you go to C2, you will see the actual increases and decreases for each of the ministries or departments. I think the President's Office, IEC, and the health sector are the ones that have major boost increases in in their budget. Every other department, including key sectors like agriculture, fisheries, see a decline, a reduction in their budgets. We don't really know how this works because we've passed the middle of the year. Half of the year is gone. And Dr. Conte, one would assume that a good part of these monies, originally allocated monies, have been spent already. So I don't know how any reduction of this amount is going to be worked out for each of these ministries. But I don't know. Somebody needs to educate me on that. But, it's already past half the year already. And, I don't know. It looks to me that, the ministries have already spent, a good part of this money is allocated to them by the budget. So if you cut those budgets now, after half the year is gone, I don't know how you work that out. Maybe the government needs to tell us that. But salaries are increased. Supply side problems are not resolved. So more dollars are going to be chasing the same number of goods or probably fewer number of goods, thereby pushing prices even further up. So I would assume we're going to see even more pressure on prices to go up. It's going to be a difficult time for many people, including those who may have received high increased salaries, especially those at the lower end of it, teachers, nurses, environmental workers, janitors, all those people, and also people working in the private sector, because I don't think those people will receive an equal increase in their wages and salaries. Also, the vast majority of Gambians who are unemployed are not going to benefit from this. So I think the government should have spent money trying to resolve supply side problems, to make sure enough goods are available on the market to drive prices down for all Gambians to be able to afford, rather than pay more money to civil servants in a way to deal with higher prices. That's not the way you deal with higher prices. You deal with higher prices by tackling supply side problems, right? So I don't think it was well advised, in my view. I could be wrong. I'm sure there are a lot of economists listening to us. They could advise us, but based on the little I know, it looks to me that it is going to be really counterproductive. You don't pay I know government is not a private business, but in private business, you wouldn't increase your pay at a time when your company is not doing well. Gambia government is not doing very well in terms of, in terms of our budget. You will see we're facing a lot of deficit. We are actually doing a lot of deficit spending. We have a lot of problems with inflation, a lot of problems with high prices. So this is the wrong time to increase salaries for civil servants, when actually the economy, by all indicators, is contracting. It's not really expanding much. So, Dr. Conte, I wanted to bring those issues out to really make an argument that this is the wrong time to actually raise salaries for civil servants. We will see how all this plays out, but I don't think it's well advised. I'm particularly concerned about taking away a good chunk of the budget of Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Fisheries. These are key sectors of our economy that the government needs to invest in more to really enable our economy to grow and expand and create employment for the people. So what you're really going to see, Dr. Conte, by taking away a chunk of this, the budget of these ministries, is that you're going to see probably many Ministry of Information, is basically wiped out. 65% of their budget is slashed. So I don't even know how they're going to survive. They may have to end up, laying off people. Um, you know, Probably you're going to see more of these ministries and departments, unable to repair their equipment. So more and more of their equipment will be laying um, unutilized. We're probably likely to see more potholes in the streets that cannot be repaired. So Gambians must brace themselves for reduced services from the government because the money is literally not there. The money is redirected to pay civil servants. It doesn't really make much sense to me that we would do that at this time when we are struggling economically. Um, but that's what happened, Dr. Khan.
Okay, thank you. I'm trying to pull out the 2022 budget that I just prepared, and I want to go back to my concern about not using accounting practices when it comes to revenues and expenses. And you clearly touch on something which I think is critical. The budget has part of the budget has already been spent, meaning 50% of the budget has been spent. So when we look at the definition of expenses and revenues, we call them nominal accounts. They are temporal accounts. At the beginning of any period, you have zero amount in each of those items. And then as you earn revenue and as you incur expenses, at the end of the period, whether you're doing quarterly, semi-annual, or annual reporting, you close your revenues. In this case, the revenues will be closed to fund account, and the expenditure will also be closed to the fund account. So that being the case, because if you look at the Ministry of Finance now, I notice that we can no longer put the Ministry of Finance's information because I got information from Facebook about copyright, so I don't want to pull out their stuff and put it on Facebook. Otherwise, they're going to mute our conversation. So that being the case, uh, revenue expenditures are nominal accounts. So if you spend, how can you revise something that you've already spent? I'm just baffled with the knowledge of these people at the Ministry of Finance. No one even raised that issue. To say we have no problem amending the budget, but we cannot amend the entire budget, 12-month budget, when 50% of that has been spent. And I think one of the National Assembly members indicated, that what the National Assembly member was complaining about was the Ministry of Public Service and whatever loan name the remaining loan names that they have attached to that ministry, 134 million. And what the National Assembly member was saying is that are they going to spend this 134 million in 6 months? So will it double next year? And the other ministry, digital economy, it was budgeted for 53 million, but he did not talk about that. And I even raised that issue. So, but unfortunately, what happened in the Gambia, because I spoke to someone who told me that his biggest disappointment is the assembly. He told me that the Gambia is now a cartel state, a mafia state. I said, why you said that? He said, well, they tricked the National Assembly members by allowing them to increase their own salaries. And then after doing that, they came down and said, can you increase civil service salaries? Because then those people would not have been able to say no. And he said, I know some of these people who were school teachers, and some of them were making less than $10,000. He said, now if you tell someone who had been earning less than $10,000, and now they're going to earn $102,000 a month, He said, "Do you really think they're going to say no?" So and then in fact, he was questioning the loyalty of UDP National Assembly members to sound economic policies. He even told me that, well, he asked, were these people only in UDP just to secure positions? And after they got it, they say, F you all. So that being the case. But I remember when this thing was announced that they were going to increase salaries and the budget was already out there, I stated, that the budget, let's have a 6 month period and then close out in June, on June 30th, and begin another accounting period July 1. But again, in my view, it's a violation of accounting principles, whether it is International Financial Reporting Standards or the US GAAP, to revise a budget that has already been spent. I can understand if you made an error and then you're going to do error correction. And as a matter of fact, that will affect only the phone account balance. I'm also concerned about the delivery of services to places that were already budgeted for an item only to be closed. What I never even understood, it is not only the Ministry of Communication. There is another ministry whose budget was cut 34.75%.
I think it's trade or something.
Trade. So how do we expect to have those things? And I am baffled. So the whole idea here is that, in fact, somebody also wrote that Barrow is not the problem. Someone wrote that, he has figured it out after 5 years that Barrow is not the problem. So we have to differentiate. My biggest disappointment during the campaign, some of these people were available to talk to us, but after the election and they secured their positions, they all disappeared. So I think now it is up to us identify National Assembly members who voted for this measure, and then to sponsor candidates in the next election. And we have to set out our differences, whether you like UDP or whether you like DOI or whatever political party. I think we all have to come together. What I'm kind of concerned about for the Gambia is that what happened in 1984 is going to happen because President Barrow is laying foundations for expenditure that we don't have. They went to India, and mind you, I just want audience to know I still support the president, but I do believe that he's been misled. And this is the time that we should engage Sankare to tell Sankare there's a problem here. The other day I was listening to Larry Summers, and I said, "Wow!" So in the United States, even look at what happened, Joe Manson, for him to accept a deal with Schumer. Larry Summers was the one who intervened to explain to him that, oh, if this thing happened, this will not. If they do this, this is not going to happen. And then he accepted. But in the Gambia, people who are expertise in different disciplines, consultation is not made. We don't respect educated people. So what is going to happen, as you say? So there's going to be more money out. What I'm kind of scared of, after they took out the $200 million loan from Bank of India or whatever financing.
Exim Bank in India.
Okay, so now they're going to use that money to pay the salaries. But what disappoints me about the finance minister, he said that there was a drop in revenue of 3.3 billion. And remember, I always used to say that the Gambia Revenue Authority will always say they raised 1.1 billion. And it's always been consistent around those figures. You remember, the project grants of 9 billion and then the program grants of 3 billion. So out of 12 billion. So out of anticipated revenues of 29 billion. So you notice that our external aid is almost 46%. So now in the Gambia, what happens, is a grant money that is not legally binding, it's not measurable, so therefore it's not available. If you cannot measure something, you cannot make it available to record. So the 12 billion that the government was anticipating to receive on project and program grants, they recorded all of them at 100%. Now the minister is saying revenue has gone down to 3.3 billion, but he did not identify whether it was the grant money or the domestic revenue. So if revenue had gone down 3.3% for 6 month period, by December it's going to go down another 3.3% if we hold everything constant. So that being the case, it's likely that revenue will go down by 6.6%. The government borrowed what they anticipated to borrow 6 billion because they had a 2.5 billion in fiscal deficit, but they had to go in again and add 4 more billion to it because they had to use part of the proceeds to pay loans. Bear in mind that they were if 100% of the projected project and program grants is received. So I'm very disappointed at the finance minister for not saying no to the president to say, can we try something else? Can we just defer this to another period? Particularly at a time when we are pandemic and most there is economic turndown in a lot of economies. A poor little country called the Gambia, how are we going to be able to do this? So the whole idea here is that the president has been misled. That expenditure, we can do expenditures without doing anything. So you can go to India and borrow 200 million, and then the World Bank gave you a 3 year loan of 337 million, and then you had a quick budget support financing, which is also a loan from the International Monetary Fund of 68 million. So it seems like what is happening within the past 3 4 months, we had 500 no four hold on we had 404 million, so 606 million of loans coming into our country. So, and I've also forgot to add the tourism money that they got, and I know that's also it's not grant money, it's loan. And then the fact that they have to go out there and build and try to lay a foundation for a 400 room hotel, when you know that most of the hotels are underutilized even during the tourist season. So what my concern about the Gambia, I'm very disappointed. I still support the president, but there's going to be a rude awakening as time goes on because they're not going to be able to meet the obligation. Someone even told me, that now private citizens are now competing with the government for loans from the banks. So no, we don't have any. And then to cut down agriculture, I don't care how what percentage, even if it's the smallest percentage possible, agriculture's budget should be increased. So they increased the budget of the president, interior, and the defense, but agriculture's budget was cut. So this is sad, and I hope one day we can engage Sankare. I don't know whether he's going to be able to. He doesn't have to answer our questions, but I think he should be able to open room for engagement. That for the president to listen to our concerns. Just because you support somebody doesn't mean that you have to follow them like a sheep. I mean, Gambia is one area, and in fact, lately, I just want to tell you, they there was a circular, they sent out for dollarization of the civil of the foreign service, meaning that all those in the embassies, they're going to be paid. Their payments going to be converted into dollars. So I told a gentleman, so if you live in the eurozone, I said your even if the Gambia says they're going to convert it to dollars, I said the bank. I said your bank, where the country that you are in, I said they're going to convert your stuff to euro.
Right.
So these are things, we don't have any clear channel of communication. And if you try to engage with them, they say that you are totally against the president's development agenda. Look at the latest thing they did in Brikama just the other day. Was it yesterday? To lay a stone for the Gambia University in Brikama for something engineering and sciences. When you know that less than 7 miles, you go to Farabada, it's a university there. Does that make any sense?
Right.
Does it make any sense at all that you have a university that you're trying to finish, you still have not finished, but you're going to lay another stone for another University of Science and Engineering? That is the most ridiculous thing that I can ever even think of. I just don't know whether, but my prediction is that the Gambia is going to go through what the country went through in 1984 very soon, and I predict by September, October, they're going to be requesting another supplementary approval. Because, so are they going to back pay these people? If they're going to increase the salaries, are they going to back pay them from January?
I'm not sure.
So, I mean, these are things, that we need to be able to answer. But unfortunately, I have no confidence in the National Assembly members. I'm going to try to reach out to one guy from, I think, here in West, because he was the one who said that the people at the bottom, if you raise salaries by 30%, how about those at the bottom, the ones at the bottom? So someone who is earning 250, 2,500, if you increase that person's salary by 30%, that's 750. But how about someone who is earning? And I was told that the president also is going to get an increase in salaries, and the ministers also.
Yes.
And in the Gambia, can I tell you one thing that I just don't understand? And I heard people were talking about it, even parliamentarians. Why can't you put the increase as allowances? Why can't the government tax people who have allowances? If you're going to get allowances, you should be taxed at least 10%. This is so this is why we cannot develop as a nation in Africa. So you have your salary, you are taxed. The allowance you're going to have, you say no tax. So how can you develop your country? We're saying that at least if you can take 90% of your allowance, but the 10% leave that for the government to go into some other ventures. So, I mean, it is my idea now is that we literally in diaspora, we cannot just talk without applying anything. So next election, people have to get together, sponsor candidates, and hook it out with them, look it out with them, because this is totally unacceptable. It's totally unacceptable, and I still do believe that the president really means well, but they are doing this because they feel that they can just run around him and tell him all kinds of lies. The government dollar now is almost 55. Do you know that?
Right. Yeah.
So by December, it's going to be 60. So when they start paying these people, guess what's going to happen to prices? I'm afraid that they're gonna print out more dollars because they're not going to get the money to pay salaries. So what they're going to do? They're going to print more money. No, this is just sad. It's just sad. Our
Thank you.
last National Assembly members, folks who were just earning 3 months ago less than $10,000, have now seen themselves earning $102,000 a month. The National Assembly's budget also was cut. And another area is the Independent Electoral Commission that exhausted its appropriation. So how can you decrease appropriation that had already been spent?
actually got a boost. Their funds are increased.
Yeah, what?
They have the budget has been increased. It
Yeah,
is
because they don't have any. They spend all their money.
right, right. And what surprised me, Doctor, particularly is an increase in the budget of the
Well,
for-
and
foreign
here
affairs.
you the
Foreign,
OIC. The OIC is out there, and look at all the flood that we have in the country today.
I know, yeah, I know. It's
Ibo Town is just like, well, that's a one for all. I don't understand why the government even allow people to settle there.
yeah, yeah,
Because it used to be when you coming down from Talinding,
right,
it's only less than a quarter of a mile you are for all.
right.
So now people decided to make that dwelling. So now the aftermath, all the water, all the water that is coming from Serakunda rests there.
Yeah, and it's the flood is pretty widespread in the urban area because I was reading on Fatu Network that parts of the Kotu Bridge, the traffic lights there, that area is all flooded.
Of course.
And I've had reports of parts of Bundung that are very, very flooded. People's properties have been damaged.
Yeah.
So the flood is pretty widespread, and I think urban Gambia is going to brace for more of these unless something drastic is done. So we could really utilize some money, government money, in a much, much better way than the way currently we are doing. But Dr. Kota, if you look at foreign affairs, their budget has been increased quite significantly also. And I'm surprised the amount of money we're spending on foreign service. For what reason, I don't even know. I think foreign service should be slashed, should be cut very seriously. But it should be consolidated and reduced in size, to redirect that money into something more productive for the country. But that's where we are now. Um, so it is very, I wouldn't say disheartening, but I wish there are people who are able to advise the government on sound economic policies. I know they have been talking about kind of an economic council some time ago, but I don't know who are in this, and I don't know how active they are currently. They could have advised the president without looking at personal interest, but the effect of any salary increase at this time on the general economy of the country. We could have probably used better use
Excuse me.
this. But like you said, Dr. Conte, you know, um, um, you know, those of us in the diaspora who like to get involved in Gambian affairs, even only at the level of ideas, probably doing much more now, even to the extent of sponsoring candidates. It's well meaning, but I think we are still doing what we can. Contributions, even only at the level of ideas, is still a lot. And I have to say this: I bring Dr. Conte here every Sunday, and sometimes Dr. Jallo, and I try to bring more Gambians also who may have something to share with Gambians, even if only at the level of ideas, so we can all have some insight into how to deal with some of these problems the country is facing. We're not doing this for any monetary gain. Dr. Conte clearly gets nothing out of this. I get nothing out of this. We try to spare at least an hour of our time every week to just talk. I'm going to emphasize that just talk about some of the concerns that the Gambia are facing now, challenges that Gambia is facing. We have no motives out of this. We're clearly not looking for any jobs in the Gambia. Um, you know, um, even with the increase in salaries, the president barely makes $7,000 a month in the Gambia. So, many of us in the diaspora make a lot more than that. So clearly, this cannot be for for any other reason other than to just contribute, even if only at the level of ideas. So we encourage all Gambians to get involved. say what you need to say. If you can't come online, uh, make a phone call, text, do whatever you can to share your views and help us all understand and find ways to deal with the challenges that the country is facing. Um, you know, Even if only by talking about it. Talking about it is where everything starts. If we don't talk, these things will not be addressed. We have to talk about them to put them in the spotlight so that there can be some awareness of them, and then hopefully there'll be political will at some point to take action in dealing with these problems that the country is facing. So we'll continue to do that, and we'll continue to bring more people here, to talk about these issues that the country is facing. Dr. Conte, I don't have much more to say on this again. I think the documents we put forward can say a lot. If you look at the second sheet, sheet two, the green numbers about ministries and departments that have received a boost, an increase in their budgets. The ones in red are the ones that have received a decrease in their budgets. So the President's Office, the IEC, I think the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, all have increases in the monies they receive. I think the President's Office by some $83 million dollars. Agriculture, fisheries, transportation, all have decreases. So Gambians may have to brace for more reduction uh, of services in these areas. I'm particularly concerned about transportation. The condition of our roads are terrible, and sadly, there may be no money to work on these roads for some time. Ministries will have to cut down on their activities because there will be no money to fund them. Equipment may lay fallow. There may be no money to repair equipment. So we're probably going to see second sheet, doctor, more vacuum in terms of service delivery uh, for the remaining of the years, at least, until the economy picks up, if it ever will. So the second sheet, Dr. Conte, will have the increases and decreases for the various ministries and departments. So I hope these information are a little bit helpful in our understanding of what is happening. And then, call your National Assembly member, representative, call whoever you can, engage each other, and, make sure we have a discussion about these issues. I would really love to see an increase in the salary of people at the lower bottom of the economy than at those at the top, for the simple reason that many at the top, for example, the president's office, the president and many of the ministers may not really need to spend the money, the extra money they receive now. They may just save it somewhere. So it's not really going to help the economy that much. But those at the bottom, any extra money they got is going to be spent in the country in providing food for their families. So that might actually help expand the economy a little bit. I think they call it the wealthier people have a propensity to save, and lower income people have a propensity to spend, right? So money that is spent in the economy may actually be a little bit more helpful in terms of expanding the economy than money that is stashed away in a savings account or in an offshore account. We need to have policies that really are focused on the least privileged in our society. Development starts from there and then goes upwards. Dr. Conde, this is all I have for today. Unless you have something else, we might wrap this up for today.
Okay. So thank you. I just want to close by saying that we should not be misunderstood by us coming here on Sundays to talk about issues, relative to our country. And the president and the vice president, together with all his ministers, should be aware, that divergent views are very critical. And I want to engage the government to at least, even the vice president, if he can have time to listen to what people are saying in diaspora. They don't have to accept 100% of what we are saying. But what we live in a country where how I mean, how did America evolve, and how is it? Why is it that America is what it is today, despite all the problems that we have pertaining to discrimination? And in most places, when policies are suggested, people are called to come and testify. They don't have to accept 100% of what people are, those people say. But and then they tend to rush things in the country because even the parliamentarians were saying that some of those things were assembled and given to them, and they were not even put in order. So, and and then here you have a minister who is an accountant stated, that revenues went down by 3.3%, 3.3 billion. So if revenues go down 3.3 billion, if you hold everything constant, your expenditures also should be decreased by 3%, 3.3 billion if you're not going to take loans. Because they have not said anything relative to and no one even talks about the Gambia Revenue Authority. It seems like that's a taboo area for them. It seems like it's a taboo area for them to touch. So my recommendation is that as we I hope Sankare, the government spokesperson, because I would love to know when Sankare is coming to the United States and going around to meet people from different areas. Because I will repeat that I've been saying is that this government is not listening. You know, unlike other countries, when you have issues, policies to be addressed, you call people, let them testify. You don't have to accept everything. But by you disagreeing with the approach of governance in the country, doesn't mean that you don't support the president. But the surrogates will say that you are against the president's development agenda.
Right.
Mark you, the president is not the one bringing all these ideas. They are the ones who are bringing these ideas, and those ideas cost money, and we don't have the money. So the 200 million they got from the bank from India and other loans that they took, so they can only pay salaries within 6 months. So next year, what are they going to do if we don't have any revenue? It's just
I
like
don't.
it's just like a child committing an offense.
I
Think,
don't know. I
huh?
don't know, Doctor. I don't know the 200 million that Exit Bank pledges. I don't think the money is received as yet. I think based on what I gather from the VP Vice President's speech, and I think the funds will be available to the Gambia, but I think the the sectors or entities that want to access these funds will have to request. They will have to make submission to request access to the funds. I hope I
Who are,
assume
who are
there.
the who are the sectors?
Um, I'm not. It's not very clear what sectors
I
are
thought the
being
vice president. I thought the vice president talked about transparency.
right, right. And I hope at some point they talk about this. But based on his speech, it looks like they are open to entities, private or otherwise, to write a proposal requesting access to these funds. And I hope that proposal will explain how they want to utilize that money, either in a project, public project, or some kind of investment in the country that may be of public interest or
But,
something like that.
but that's only 10 billion.
Right, right. So I think basically that's it's not very detailed, but I think that is what he was talking about during his interaction with the press. My understanding, I may have to revisit that speech again, but it looks like that's what he was saying. So we will see how those funds are utilized. Uh, you know, it's Gambia again. There may never be any real transparency about how that money is used, but I think Exim Bank has made that money available to Gambians, Gambia to use to address some of the challenges they have in the country.
What are the challenges?
Well, I think that is to be decided by the government. They may utilize the money in the health sector because they've been talking a lot about health sector, maybe provision of drugs, provision of equipment, but I don't know for sure.
Why
These
do
are
we have why do we have to go to Senegal for treatment?
right, exactly. So but that's going to be a long-term investment. I think Gambia has a lot. In fact, I was watching law students who just graduated be inducted into the legal fraternity today, and I was like, I hope I could see engineers and
Yep.
scientists, people who have degrees in
Nope.
physics, you know, electrical, mechanical engineering, graduating like that, in the country, because ultimately I think Gambia is going to be developed, from the approach of science and technology, not dumping all these people with low degrees, in the country. I don't know what use they're going to be. The legal field is getting flooded every year, with, I want to see engineers, people with science degrees, physics, chemistry, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, civil engineering, stuff like that. That's the hope. That's going to be the hope of this country, not degrees in history or law, or not to say these are not important. They are important,
But they're saturated.
yeah, exactly. And they are of little impact on Gambia's needs today. Our need is development, infrastructure, technology, and we can only get that through science education, in the physical sciences, so that's it. This
Okay.
conversation will continue. Dr. Conte, thank you very much for being here again.
You are welcome.
Sharing your views with us. I hope Gambians, we are all utilizing this moment very well in advancing our country to the next level. Again, thank you very much. You have a great
You are welcome. Take care.
Thank you, Doctor.